Hello, and welcome to a series of registration tutorial videos offered by SAPL. I'm Sarah, the undergraduate program specialist at the School of Architecture, Planning, and Landscape. We're here with part 2 of the 3-part series on registration terminology. In part 1 of the registration terminology videos, we reviewed the various terms associated with your course components and modalities. Now in part 2, let's look at the terms connected to the various registration actions that you can take. The add function is when you add a new course to your schedule. This means you have successfully enrolled into a course. The drop feature is when you completely remove a course from your schedule. This means you're no longer registered in the course. The withdraw function is when you remove yourself from a course. This is similar to the drop function, except it happens after the drop deadline in that semester. You can withdraw from a course up until the last day of classes in that term. When you withdraw from a course, your tuition will not be refunded and you'll have a W as a final grade. These 3 actions are all time sensitive, and I've tried to show it in this diagram. Here, you see a timeline between the start of registration to the last day of classes for any given semester. You can add and drop classes up until the drop deadline. The drop deadline usually happens first in any semester. After that, you can only add classes up until the add swap deadline. Any drop actions made at this time automatically become withdrawals. Your tuition won't be refunded even if it's 1 day after the drop deadline. And finally, you can withdraw from your class right up until the last day of classes for that semester. On the right, you'll find the QR code to the academic schedule, which contains all the important dates and deadlines associated with each semester. This is a good page to bookmark and refer back to frequently. On the left, you'll find a screenshot of a section pulled from the academic schedule. The registration dates will be different for each semester, so it's important to check these dates alongside the relevant semester. The last day to drop a class is important to mark down because that's the latest you can remove a class from your schedule in that given semester. There is no financial penalty, which means you won't lose your tuition money from dropping a class. The next deadline is the last day to add or swap a class. After this date, you won't be able to enroll in any other classes. There's no late enrollment available at UCalgary, so make sure you pay attention to the add deadline for each semester. The last deadline is the latest you can withdraw from a course in a semester. As a reminder, when you withdraw from a course, it's after the drop deadline and by the last date to withdraw from classes. There is a financial penalty associated with this action as it's after the drop deadline, which means you won't get your tuition refunded and you will earn a W grade instead. You may have noticed when you looked at registration deadlines that the add deadline is the last day for you to add or swap a class. Swapping a class means to trade one course for another. For example, if you were registered in Data 201 but you wanted to take Computer Science 217 instead, you can drop the 2 courses. You can swap the 2 courses. The edit function allows you to change the secondary component of a course, which is usually the lab or tutorial, while the main component of the course, such as a lecture, stays the same. For example, let's say you were enrolled in Data 201, but you wanted to change your lab section 4 to a different section. In this case, you would use the edit function to modify only your lab section. Your lecture section stays the same. As a reminder, swap and edit actions can only be performed up until the add deadline of each relevant semester. Let's look at this sample student schedule on their Student Center to understand the difference between the swap and edit functions. We'll pretend that the student didn't want to take Architecture 201 anymore and switch it to an art history class. the student would use the swap function to completely switch out of that class. Now, let's say that the student wanted to change up the timing only for the tutorial in Biology 451. In this case, they would use the edit function to keep the lecture at the same time, but change up tutorial section 6 to something else, like tutorial section 4. But what if you needed to change the main component of your course? In the same example, let's say the student wants to switch lecture 1 of their Architecture 201 to a different lecture. In this situation, unfortunately, neither the swap nor edit function will work. Instead, you'll need to first drop the entire course, which includes the main and subcomponents of the course, and then add the entire course again with the new lecture section. On the topic of editing and swapping, do not use Schedule Builder to do this. In the past, I've seen a lot of students who missed checking on or off certain settings in Schedule Builder and have accidentally dropped their entire schedule. To avoid this messy scenario, which happens quite frequently, please use your Student Center to make the changes to your schedule. Here's a screenshot of the Student Center. The Edit and Swap buttons are generally located at the bottom of your course schedule. To summarize, I've brought back the time frame of when you can take the different registration actions. Similar to before, you can add, drop, or swap and edit up to the drop deadline. After the drop deadline, you can add or swap and edit your courses. You can also withdraw from your courses. Finally, after the add swap deadline, the only action you can take is to withdraw from your classes up until the last day to do so. When you try to swap or edit a course, it can only happen successfully if you meet two conditions. There are no time conflicts. If the course or course component you want to switch into overlaps even a minute with another course, you will not be able to make the switch successfully. Another restriction is if there is no space in the course or course component that you want to swap or edit into. If the course component you want to switch into is full, you won't be able to swap or edit successfully. If you're swapping one course for another, make sure you check that all components of that course, such as the lecture, lab, and tutorial, all have seats available for you to switch into. For example, if you try to swap into a course where the lecture is open, but the corresponding lab section is full, you won't be able to swap into the new one successfully. And that takes us to the end of part 2. Join me in part 3, the final part of the registration terminology videos, where I will cover requisites, restrictions, and reserve caps, and the waitlist. See you all there.